Wonderful. Uh,
Right. So, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. And I'm going to introduce and say a huge thanks. Whoops, got somebody else to let in. To Sharon, Sharon Lovoy. Sharon runs a successful consulting practice. She's a master trainer in type coach and an MBTI practitioner. She's dedicated to finding ways to integrate type into every facet of her clients' lives. And for the next hour, she will help us think about learning to love and live with introverts. So over to you, Sharon, and thank you.
and thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank all of you for being here because I know you had other choices. So thank you so much for picking the session. And as we go through this together, I think one thing that you'll enjoy is that I put in my segment of the downloads, I actually gave you a very practical tool that's in there that you can utilize. And so I hope that you'll get a chance to download that and make some use out of this. So let me just quickly jump into all of this stuff. So first of all, in terms of what's my there you go. Just quick stuff about me. Who cares really? But as Viv said, I own a company called Lovoy Teamworks, and I've been really fortunate. I've got about 425 plus client organizations that I've worked with. I'm old, y'all, so I've had a chance to gather all these amazing people. But I do executive coaching. I'm also a facilitator, and I used to be an HR director and director of training, and I also went to mediation school and typical NFP, all kinds of things. I'm also a master trainer in crucial conversations, and so this is really a story of how I had to look inward and find and really come to terms with some flaws that I had in relationship to myself, my relationship with my husband, and some ways that I terribly misjudged him, but how I also had looked outward at my own family of origin, and then looking even more outward, working with my clients and teaching them how to make sure they valued introversion and looking how to resolve conflicts. So again, you got some very practical tools in this. So to be clear, I married a guy who thought I was a fixer-upper, you know, not wonderful guy. I mean, obviously, but he didn't have any friends. And so I found that kind of concerning. And I thought he's kind of socially handicapped. I mean, that's what I thought in my head is that he doesn't have enough friends, so there must be something there because he's just doesn't make friends as easily as I do. And I just didn't get him. And he wanted to stay up late by himself and urged me going to bed, Sharon. And I would think, gosh, what is going on here in terms of why doesn't he want me to stay up with him? And I just didn't understand any of that. And then I found that, silence is just not golden. And I really thought I had made a mistake. And I was convinced that he had made a mistake as well, that I wasn't the right person for him. And I thought because we had so much silence that he just didn't love me. I mean, I really came to some really bad conclusions there. And y'all, this went on for 10 years of not understanding this whole dynamic. I just didn't comprehend or get it. And he would like to, as an example, he loves to listen. There's a show in the US called Car Talk. It's two guys who are both MIT trained PhD guys, but they discuss fixing cars. And it's more a joke kind of show. And I can remember one day that I started talking during the show. And I was telling it was clear that my outer chihuahua was coming out and that I was clearly interrupting him as he was trying to listen to his favorite show. And he said, "Stop talking." And I was taken aback, like, well, wait a second, I thought we were supposed to be together here. And I just didn't comprehend, what was taking place. I didn't understand the dynamics. And luckily for me, believe it or not, I work for the Internal Revenue Service. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy, very much an ISTJ organization. But as I said, they sent me to a type class as a participant. And it's because the IRS was actually early adopters of type. They love type. They ate it, drank it, slept it, wanted us to go to classes on type. And I learned, and they eventually sent me to Otto Kroger for certification in type, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But I finally figured out why I was so different from the rest of the organization because, as you might imagine, it was mainly ISTJs that worked inside our organization. I know this because I did so many classes with the group. But I finally had a diagnosis about what was going on with my husband, what was his problem was. But I finally realized that ignorance wasn't bliss, it was dangerous because this was the trajectory that I was on was not a good one in terms of figuring out the same that he had all the problems here. So I looked at this model. This is actually one I put together, and it's called Awareness, Accountability, and Action. And it's teaching people to be aware of things they should be doing, things they should not be doing, understanding how to be more accountable, and that really our actions that we take are based on the choices that we make. So as I started thinking about this, I thought, you know what? This type stuff, I've got to really understand this and figure this out and realize that I was given the key to Rosetta Stone. I mean, that's what was when I received the information on type, it was like, wow, I'm married to an introvert. That was such a eureka moment for me just to even understand what was going on. But I had to work on me first because keep in mind, I was very, very judgmental in terms of this. And I had to calm down that chihuahua that I had going on there because that just wasn't helping anybody or anything. And notice here's some of the judgments I made. I'm superior because I make friends so easily. I never worry about when say an event. Something will come to me and just. But I even got help in terms of coming to terms with this from a roommate. And who was that? Catherine Hirsch. Y'all, so believe it or not, Catherine Hirsch moved in with me and my husband for a period of time. And I had an INTP sandwich. My husband is an INTP. Catherine's an INTP. And together, I think they had to double team me to help me understand what introversion was about and how to value that. And to give you a most cringy moment that I had, I was telling Viv about this. I was teaching a training class, and it had been just a rough session trying to get myself to this particular class. And my plane was late. I barely made it to this training class in another part of it was in Texas. And after I got finished teaching this particular training class, there was a guy in there, it was a black guy. And I said, do you know who you look like? And he said, who? And I said, you look just like Morgan Fairchild. Now, what I thought I was saying to him was that he looked like this guy. What I really said to him was that he looked like this white woman who wears shoulder pads. And I think he must have thought that I was saying he looked like this. I mean, it was just one of those. It wasn't until he got down to the parking lot that I realized what in the heck I said and how cringy and awful that was. And I was just extremely embarrassed. I mean, I really was coming to terms with the fact that, Sharon, you let your mouth get ahead of your thinking and you got to stop this. And so I decided to make some different choices going forward. And what were some of those choices? Number one, as I said, John loves car talk. And so I would say to him, honey, it's 10 minutes before car talk. Where are you going to listen to this? Because I want to make sure you're set up so that you can actually listen to your show without interruption from Yappy Dog over here. And if he missed an episode of Car Talk, this is before the days of podcasts, I would record it so he would make sure I would make sure he did not miss it. If we had company over the weekend, I left several hours on Sunday night saying, hey, I know it's been a long weekend, a lot of people. Let me just go to the Y for a couple hours and give you a break. And I will tell you this, not one time did he ever say, don't go. He was like, go ahead and go on. And then in the mornings, before I got married, this is my mornings. Top 40 on the radio. I am singing. I am dancing. I mean, I am just making all kinds of racket in the mornings and just going at it. And John said, we need to have quiet in the mornings. We need to have it dark in the mornings. And I thought, okay. But I'll be honest with you, I started thinking, that's kind of nice. I mean, it was kind of nice to have a nice soft entry into the day instead of the harsh way that I was entering in. And we even taught Casey about type. So I learned about type when Casey was probably 5 years old. And I'll never forget the first time she met my business partner. She said, hello, Mr. Rowell. I'm an extrovert. This is my friend Emily. She's an introvert. She needs time by herself, but she's not going to get it while she's here with me. But I know she's going to get some time by herself when she gets home. Even she could speak type. And I never forget the time we were going on a 2 week vacation, and Casey said, Mom, Dad's an introvert. We're both extroverts. How are we going to make sure that Dad gets some time by himself? So even she began to speak the language in terms of really thinking about how important time alone was for John, and that we intentionally carved that time out. And by the way, that's a practice we still do now, as a matter of fact. But I intentionally would say to my husband, I know you need some time by yourself. Here's what I'm going to do instead. So I linked why I was doing what I was doing so that he would know I am doing this as an act of love for you, and this is something that's really important. Now, let me also say at this juncture here, he also was very good about saying, "Hey, you've been by yourself for several days. Would you like to have some people over?" So it wasn't just all giving from my end, but he was really careful to make sure that I had time with other people. So it just made it just this amazing, conscious choices that we're making for one another. So here's what I'd like to hear. I don't know, Viv, how many people do we have in this segment right now? I can't see everybody. I'm sorry, you're on
We
mute. I'm
have
sorry.
13 participants. 13.
Okay. Okay. So I think we could have a breakout space if you don't mind. And what I'd like to hear from extroverts, I'd like to know what you have done to intentionally respect the needs of an introvert. And introverts, what do you need from others that you're not getting to respect your own introversion? What is it that you need that you would like to give voice to that you're not receiving? All right. And I'll stop sharing now. Then what I'll do is I'll share this in the screen. I should, in the breakout rooms, I should be able to do that.
Okay. So I'm assigning 4 rooms.
Okay.
Do you just want
Awesome.
people to select their own
No, just go ahead, just
random
randomly
mix?
Yeah, just make
Yeah,
it so
random
people
mix.
off in there. That'd be great. Awesome. Thank you, team. I
Okay.
appreciate
And how
everybody.
long do you want?
Let's keep this to about 4 minutes. And I'll tell you, let's do 5 so they have a chance to introduce themselves because we know that's important. Because again, that's not just, we want to make sure we're here so we get a chance to see one another.
Right. I think they have you all got options to go into the rooms?
No,
No.
yet. Oh,
Yep.
yep. Yes, if you click on the breakout rooms in the bottom of the screen, you
Yeah.
can choose
I've
one.
I've I've set the breakout rooms up. I think people are joining now.
Yeah, they
We
have to
need
click
some in
on it.
room 3. We need some in room 2. We need some in room 3. While you're doing that, I'm going to share my screen into the breakout room. Let's share the breakout space, and here we go. Yes. Okay. That should be able to see that. Welcome back, everyone. So I'll make sure I know that you guys had just a short amount of time together, but we're having our conversation with everyone as a group. So let's talk first of all to the introverts first. What are some things that you need to feel like that your introversion is respected?
I can say something, Sharon, if you like. I don't know if you can see me. I'm on a different laptop from usual because my other machine is being used for the other hosting. Um, the thing that I need sometimes is just that quiet. I mean, it's a bit like you were saying. So at the start of a meeting, everybody's laughing and choking around and talking. I need it to be quiet. And if something comes up as a question that we need to consider, I don't want them to be talking about it. I need the quiet. Otherwise, I just can't think.
There you go. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. How about extroverts? What's one thing that you recognize now that perhaps what have you done to intentionally respect the needs of an introvert?
I give my husband time for quiet when he gets home from work because he's with people all day long and he goes up the stairs and I know, don't follow him, just leave until he comes back down.
There you go. And even saying to him, hey, I'm intentionally give you some time by yourself because I know you need it. I mean, that's what they love. It's like, notice the introverts are going, yes, just tell us that. Awesome. Any other thoughts from either groups?
I mentioned that it was about having the feeling I've got an option to be on my own or not. So if I go into a group and I know this is going to be an hour or 2 hours meal or something, then I think, oh no. But if I know I can move out of that group anytime, I feel far more relaxed about the participation.
There you go. No mandatory being
Yeah.
there. Awesome. So I want to continue down the path in terms of what happened next, because again, I described what happened in terms of me and my husband, and then obviously our nuclear family. But I also wanted to look at my family of origin, and I would say particularly my mother, because it certainly became evident to me. And I will tell you this: I had everybody in my family take MBTI, so let's be clear on that. That's the one thing. It's kind of like before you join the Williams family, you have to take type. And so discover my mom is an ISFJ. And as I looked at my mom in particular, let's see if I can make this thing work. It's like not, why is it not letting me advance? What's happening here? It's not letting me advance at all. There you go. I think it's let me do it now. Perfect. I lost my, so, oops, what happened here? Wow, it just jumped ahead. Sorry about that. So as I look at her, she's the one that's obviously in the flowered hat. I mean, she's evidently the mother in this picture. You could see at that time there were just 5 of us. At that time there was later 7. But it became clear to me why we spent so much time at the library. I mean, my poor mom would take us to the library. We didn't stay there for an hour. We would stay there the entire afternoon. And then she actually talked the librarians into giving her teacher's pass so that we could check out as many books as we wanted, because the ultimate goal was for us to come home, then go to our bedrooms and spend the rest of the time reading and reading and reading. So she was carving out time for herself by doing that, which that was really smart. The other thing we had one of those wall telephones, that black thing with this long cord. And it was right next to our back door. And she would take the door and shut it on the cord and then go out there and just have a few blessed moments by herself with one of her friends to keep from having to deal with all of us, because there were so many of us around. And it's just like, it's the only way I guess she'd keep herself sane. But we didn't have family dinners. Everybody says, you must have family dinners for family happiness. No, my parents ate upstairs by themselves, totally with the door locked and their food up there. And they were away from the rest of us because there were so many of us and we were loud talking. And we even had a situation where I had a cousin who was an INFJ, and her mother wanted her to be a cheerleader. And she kept saying, I don't want to do this. And her mother said, I feel like sometimes you're not even my child. I feel like that you're Beebe's child instead. Who was Beebe? That was my mother. So they were more aligned, obviously, than she was with her own mom. But we all of a sudden, one of the things that we did as a family in terms of really integrating type into how we reacted with each other, because keep in mind, this is all of us here. We would take family vacations, and we all married introverts, by the way, which is kind of interesting. 7 kids. And we would intentionally, number one, make sure that everybody had their own bedroom. The couples did not share bedrooms with anybody else. But the second thing we did was during the day, we wanted everybody to have a great vacation. And so we did not demand that everybody do everything together. You could sit on the beach, be plugged in, read a book, or just simply look at the water and not talk to a soul. And nobody came along and encouraged you, oh, you got to come join us. You got to do this. You got to do that. Nobody did that. We made sure that everybody had total autonomy. Then at nighttime, we would come together and play games and do that. And we established this in terms of expectations from the beginning so that everybody would have a great vacation. And it really made living together just amazing. But then I turned my attention from my family of origin then to my clients. And as you saw earlier, I teach, like a lot of different companies. I've just had a really wonderful practice in terms of bringing type to many different organizations, profit, nonprofit, manufacturing, you name it, all kinds of groups. And the exercise that we all do, what kind of vacation would you take? If money was no object, what kind of vacation would you plan? Who would you take with you? Where would you go? What activities would you do? You've all seen this. Let me just add a couple things to it. Excuse me. What are you doing? Sorry. My screen just all of a sudden decided to take a hike on its own. Why is it doing that? Hold on 2 seconds. I think we have operator error, and that would be me. All right, I've got a touch screen, and I touched it one time too many. All right, so let's go back to this again. Okay, so we've all done this exercise. I'm just going to share a couple of tweaks that I've put to it to make it just a little bit better and a little bit sharper. So I'm hoping maybe it's something you might could use. I gave them a go-by sheet. And this, by the way, is in your handout that's posted underneath my name on the site. And they would literally list out, did they have a spouse or somebody special? And would they take that person with them? Do they have kids? Would they take their children with them? And then how many friends? And the scribes would literally take down each one of the numbers, 0, 40, 400. And I would show them this on the screen. And where do you want to go? And what do you want to do? And the last question is, do you want to go together as a group or separately? So that's an example of what they have. And again, it's in your thing that you can download. And here's some examples. Obviously, you can take a look at this chart right here and you see this person, how many friends are they taking? No friends at all. And they're going to go look down at the bottom separately. But if you look at the other one, they're going to take 125 people. And keep in mind, there was 3 people in the group. They're going to take 125 people with them. And they're going to go together by separate jets, which I thought was pretty funny. And then here's another example. This is one where they're down at the bottom, notice in there, we're going to go separate. And then we'll say, 100% together. And I found that just to be an interesting thing. If you look at this, the 2 charts in the middle are introvert. The extroverts are on the outside. So if you look at this, together, yes, with an exclamation mark. Notice the next 2, separate, separate. The last one, together. And you can even see the differences in the numbers, 35 people. The introverts, 3 people, 3 people. No one's going to take, what's the other group taking? Oh, they're taking 71, 71 friends with them. No, it's more than that. 716. Sorry, guys. I mean, it's just crazy just to see this. But I love the fact that when they present this to the rest of the group, you can see the entire group has light bulbs go on and they recognize how poorly they have planned time with each other and what they need to do in the future. We'll skip this one. So I also show some examples of some that have already been filled out. This one right here says they're going to take no friends with them. And I asked them and said, guess who these are? Cruise, Disney World, relax, read, see Mickey. Please pay attention to that particular phrase down there, see Mickey, and they're going separately. This next group said, we're going to take 1,137 of our closest friends. And where are we going to go? Everywhere. And notice that partay. Notice the exclamation marks that's on this. Meet the locals as if we don't have enough people with us. And instead of this group, which is going to see Mickey, this group's going to go talk to Mickey, and they're together. Now, this one, y'all, this is funny. They said they started taking friends and they wiped them out. So we're not taking anybody with us. A quiet place, and we're not telling you where it is. And are we together? Not. And they double scratch that as the table and double underline separately. And this group did this one for me as a joke. We're going to gamble, shop, eat, sex, drink, sex, naked on the beach and party. Then we're going to go to the Holy Land to pray for forgiveness at the end. And of course, everybody gets a big chuckle over that. And so it's so funny just to see the whole conversation around that. But again, we talked then about what have you been doing your own vacations? And they recognize, we've failed to carve out time for the people that are introverts in our family. We don't think about this. So I take it a step further, and I talk about the fact that introversion does not mean shyness. Shyness is a degree of social confidence, and both introverts and extroverts can be shy. So do not use this term ever in reference to an introvert. But also don't use the term for extroverts. It doesn't mean ego. So when an extrovert invites you to an event, it's not because they want you to clap for them or anything. They just want to have somebody that can share the event with. And so it's not about ego. And one of the things I talked about intentionally is interruptions, because interruptions are such a sharp point of something they can immediately apply in the workplace. And I tell them, when you come by an introvert's cubicle, don't say you busy and just start lodging into what it is that you're going to say. What you say is, hey, do you have a minute? Is now a good time for you? I said, ask a question. Don't just ask the question. Are you? Of course they're busy. And I said, the other piece to this is, as I so many times, introverts have ideas stolen from them. I said, they'll mention an idea in a meeting and nobody acts like they said anything. Then 15 minutes later comes their idea out of the mouth of the extrovert and they present as if they thought about it. And the introvert's sitting there thinking, I came up with this. How come everybody's getting excited over your thinking this idea up when I didn't? And I explained it. I said, look, this is not what's happening. Joe had a good idea. Nobody realizes he said it. I'll say it and I'll get credit for it. I said, y'all, we are not that swift. Here's what happens. You mention idea, and then it goes to the back of our brains. And we're so busy talking on top of each other because that's what we do. Then finally, your idea goes to the middle of our brain. And then it feels like the heavens opened up and converged a fresh, new, original idea that we thought up. And then we speak it as if we came up with it. And so we don't have intention in terms of stealing this. I said, however, you've got to advocate for yourself, and it works like this. Sharon, thank you for bringing my idea up again. I mentioned earlier in the meeting, my timing was off, but thank you so much for bringing my idea up again. I said, clearly use that possessive my to help us understand that we didn't say it first. I said, you've got to do that in terms of advocating for yourself. I said, the other thing that's so frustrating, obviously, is the tool of brainstorming, which we all know can be frustrating. But I said, for introverts, they spit at ideas by themselves. That's how they come up with things from that rich, amazing interior. I said, for us as extroverts, it's like there's a potter's wheel going around. It's like we all take out slugs of clay and throw in the potter's wheel. And then the introverts are thinking, that's a bunch of half-baked ideas. And it's because they are. But as we put our hands on it and shape it all together, we eventually collectively design a pot. I said, it's very much, I said, but we talk on top of each other as we do it, and it never feels rude. And so they take that as time to really think about how they've got to be conscious of how they're treating one another through these kind of processes. But wait, there's more. I also talk in length about the fact that lunchtime can be a really critical time to have some time by yourself. I said, but it goes like this. Isabel's sitting there and I come to Isabel, hey, you want to go to lunch? And Isabel goes, no, I got a few things I got to catch up on. I'll talk to you later. And then I go, dang, she doesn't have any friends. And so I feel sorry for Isabel as if she's somebody who's friendless and nobody cares anything about her. I said, for that person, lunch could be that most critical time in which they've got to recover. I said, don't think because they turned you down that they don't like you or that they don't have friends, because they do. They're just saying today is not a good day. But you can continue to go back and ask again. Maybe not today, but maybe next week might be a good time. So I said, don't quit inviting, but also don't make up stories about why that person is saying no. And we'll talk more about stories in just a minute. I also explained to them that sleep is not a substitute for time by yourself. It's got to be conscious time. And that's why you have introverts who are so tired because they get up earlier to spend time away from the rest of the family, or they stay later than the rest of the family, and they're exhausted. And I always remind them, I said, so you've got to be careful that you don't interpret that as being time alone. And I said, and that's one of the reasons why introverts are so tired, y'all. I said, first of all, there's just the daily labor of having this amazing, rich interior that just is their world. And they literally to crawl out of that to go through Border Patrol, to spend some time with us on the outside. And it's exhausting going back and forth for them in terms of doing this. But the other part of it is that they're just exhausted because they're not getting enough rest, because they're really trying to make sure they're taking care of their introversion as well as their own bodily needs. And I think there's some things in the chat. I can't read that. Hold on, let me see what the things are in the chat. Oh yeah, this is so true. I love it. This is great. Thank you, team. So then I jokingly asked them, as introverts, who would you like me to come to your house and explain this to them? And what's funny is that some people have actually taken me up on that, to have like a short session with their family, or I've done it with couples, as a matter of fact. And I'm not a couples therapist, y'all. I'm just an executive coach and a facilitator. But I've also sat down and explained this one. And I will tell you this, I intentionally give more time in the sessions to introversion versus extroversion, intentionally, because this is the first time they've ever had anybody explain to them, and it's all brand new material. So one of the questions I always ask them is, for introverts, how do you get your time alone by yourself every day? And what happens if you don't get it? Then I asked the extroverts to talk in their thing about, what did you learn today that was just a total revelation, and how did the pandemic affect you? Now, let me talk to you about why I ask these questions. Number one, the rest of the things I've done, like when I do SNN, TNF, and all that, everybody, we have a chance for small discussion and then big group discussion. This particular one, I pair introverts up with extroverts, and the introverts get a chance to talk about what it's like for them if they don't get their time by themselves. And you could see that the extroverts are having this eureka moment, because they go, didn't know all this was going on, didn't realize these people need some time by themselves. And this is really such a huge thing that it's you can see the realization really hit. And then the last part of it is, we talk about how the pandemic changed, and the introverts say, you know what? We discovered that time by yourself, that's kind of like a superpower. And it's something that the introverts have known all this time. And we are late to the party in terms of figuring out how great this is. So I'd like to hear from y'all. I'm going to stop sharing just for a minute. What's your thoughts about as you think about this? I'm so curious about what's going through your brain as you're processing these things.
I just had an aha moment. I was saying my husband he's an introvert and works with people constantly all day till he gets home. And we'll have dinner, and then I look over and he's just sound asleep. And it's like, that's his way, even though the sleep isn't, that's his way of just escaping.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, Sharon, about, obviously it's great that you're encouraging extroverts to think about how they can help introverts, but what about the other way around? What do we introverts need to be doing to, help or relate better to extroverts?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I think that one of the things I've noticed that John has done is he's really good about saying, hey, especially during the pandemic, because I will tell you this. Now, here's my husband's take on the pandemic. I've been training for this my whole life. I mean, for him, it was like, yay. And for me, it was like, oh my gosh. I was really struggling. I was having a hard time. And he started creating ritual during the day where I'd stop working and just sit down and have a conversation with him. We'd have a half glass wine. He just knew I had to have visits. I had to have something. He put people on Zoom with me because he knew I was lonely. So that for me. How about other extroverts? What are some thoughts that you might have? Mary Lynn, what's your thought about this?
Well, what's interesting is, because I have introverted thinking in the fourth, I was thinking that I like an agenda. I like to be prepared ahead of time as much as an introverted person, to have that time to reflect and collect my thoughts, because I'm not ready to just spout off and say, I've got this idea. I need that time as well. So I appreciate what an introvert has to go through. And I live with an ENFP who's very he does not like sound around him. And so I think it's like in our small group, it is context. And so how do we, develop it? So that's kind of our story.
Thank you. Thank you.
My husband and I love holidays together, but we also love doing different things. So I love going on like a salsa weekend with loads of people, lots of dancing, lots of music. And he likes going for quiet country walks on his own, somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. And that's fine. It's just really nice. You don't have to enjoy the same things all the time.
Exactly. What I'd like to do is take us next to specifically a tool that I've used to help people work through conflicts, because I think this is an area where I think sometimes that pause and that quiet, we do a lot of misinterpretation about what's taking place. So I was thinking this might be useful for the group. So I'd love your thoughts on this. There you go. So, one of the things as I work with groups, it's not just enough to tell them about these differences, but it goes back to what Catherine said. How do we put this into place for both ways, in terms of this? And conflict has been such a major issue. I felt like they needed a real practical tool. And I know I'm an ENFP, but I'll just tell you this. I intentionally teach class lessons on how do you do things, like how do you delegate, how do you go about doing these kind of things. And conflict resolution is one of the things I spend a lot of time teaching and training. And the big question that we're asking at this choice point is, are we curious or are we furious? So we know, for example, in terms of looking at this, it literally depends on what we're telling ourselves about what's going on. Are we saying they're loudmouths who talk too much? Or I wonder if they're extroverts and don't realize their impact. So notice the difference in making a statement versus making and asking a question. It also works like this. They don't love me. I wonder if they're tired and just need a break. So notice there's a difference in that judgy thing that's said first and that question that's said at the end. And what we know is that curiosity is everything. It keeps us from jumping conclusions and just making awful mistakes. And we know, for example, from conflicts, extroverts, we can just stop talking. We just keep thinking we can just talk our way through things. But I also remind introverts, we cannot read your minds. I mean, at some point, you've got to tell us what's there, because we're going to make up stuff. And there's a difference between truth and perception. Chris Ardress talks about the fact that he said, here's how it works. He said, we take in data, in other words, see, hear stuff, then we add meaning to it, then we make assumptions based on what we saw or heard, then we draw conclusions, and we take action. And he said, it literally comes in the form of judgment in terms of this. And so it's really thinking, he also said there's two arenas that we operate in. One is the public arena, in which we're talking back and forth, having exchanges with people. But he said there's also that private arena, which there's a lot of dynamics that are happening there. And he said, here's something that's so important. He said, what's happening in that private arena, it always impacts how we treat other people. It always impacts that. And by the way, you've got this will be in your materials. So as I was thinking about this session, I was thinking we've got to use the pause a lot more effectively, because too many times we're just making stuff up about what's going on with that other person, what they're thinking, what they're up to. We're doing that. And then we generate all these stories. And for us, that becomes the truth. And we also need to quit saying to ourselves, calm down, because I will tell you this, making a statement to yourself, calm down. When somebody says to you, calm down, do you get calm? I am calm. Well, guess what? We don't get calm either when we say that to ourselves. So just telling ourselves to calm down does not work. But asking curious questions does calm us down. Well, I'm not seeing about my role in this. What could I be missing? What good reasons could they have for that? So we're asking these things. Now keep in mind, you got this great tool at the end that has all this. And what's provable, in other words. So let's talk about this practical tool that again is if you look back on the site for this class, is listed on there. So the first thing is that we need to walk through our thinking and not have the certainty that we know what's going on with that other person. We've got to do that and start with positive intentions. Again, being curious, not furious. And again, this is in your handout. But here's the other part about it, is that clarify our good intentions instead of saying, You need to explain yourself. I'm not here to blame you. I just don't understand what happened. And I left one piece out I could tell from my screenshot. We never walk in saying, we need to talk. Is that not the worst statement to hear when you get in the car? But instead, hey, can we talk about something that's important to both of us? That question, can we talk about something that's important to both of us, keeps people from being defensive. People will put up their shields. If you look at the word defensive has the word fence right in the middle of it. We put a big old wall up because we're so scared. We've got to do things to make sure that everybody's in a good place, and making requests versus just coming at somebody makes a big, big difference. And then express hope and reassurance. You know what? I know if we put our heads together, we can figure this out. We've got to have some sense of, y'all, that we're going to be okay by the time we come to the end of this conversation. Because you know what happens. Your life starts flashing before your eyes. Terrible things are happening. But it's reassuring that, hey, you know what? Between the two of us, we can do this. We can make this happen. And then instead of saying, you make me so mad, and all of a sudden we've got this huge tsunami coming at people. What happens if anybody has a tsunami coming at them? Y'all answer this. What happens? What do you do when tsunamis coming at you? Anybody?
Run.
Run,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, the same thing is true if a tsunami of emotion comes at you. If somebody says, I'm so angry with you because we feel like we want to run. It feels like somebody's coming at us, they're yelling at us. Nobody wants to be there for that particular conversation. So expressing anger, you make me so mad, is not the way to begin any conversation. Instead, facts. And what we know about facts is this: facts are calming. And it's saying, yesterday I heard you say this, you said this, I did this took place, whatever the facts may be. And keep in mind, y'all, what you're sharing here is only the facts that you know. You're not sharing the facts. You're sharing the amount of facts that you're aware of. And then, what are you wondering about? Because you know what? Go back to what Chris Arger said. In that private arena, there's a lot that's happening. So now you share the private arena with them. You know, the story I'm telling myself, and I could be wrong, is that, you know, that you forgot to pick up the stuff from the grocery store, or you were mad at me for asking you to do that. I don't know if that's true or not. This is what I'm thinking, and I could be so wrong about this. So the thing that you're doing when you're doing this is you're not blaming them. You're saying this is the impact that's had on me, y'all. This is the frustration I'm experiencing. This is why it matters, because people need to know why it matters. And the thing that, again, we're looking at, no certainty here, y'all, because certainty is what's going to damage the relationship. Then ask them to share their side of it. Instead of, why did you do that? It's funny because my clients always believe in the 5 whys. Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? It's terrible because that feels like implied blame. In other words, I've already decided that you screwed up. So why'd you do that? That's terrible. But notice this phrase right here. How do you see it? Help me understand what you're seeing. And I will tell you this phrase right here. Help me to understand why. So why did you do that feels like this. I'm making you prove to me why you did something. Help me to understand means you and I are beside each other trying to understand this problem over here. Help me understand what happened. Tell me more. I'd like to know more about your thinking. And we're not, y'all, at this stage of the game, we're not trying to fix anything in terms of this. Not at all. We're not trying to have anything fixed. We're just we're inviting them to share what they know about what happened. Because keep in mind, we only know our little part. We do not know their part of it. We're not mind readers here. And so then when we disagree, which we are, I see things differently. The good news is I found some information that's going to keep that happen. The one thing we don't do is accuse. You're lying, you're mistaken, you're wrong. I know, as I mentioned in Catherine and Elizabeth's session earlier, we were talking about gaslighting. I call out disinformation for a hobby at nighttime. I know that sounds weird, but I'm very, very careful never to say you're wrong about that. Even though see things that are posted online that are absolutely wrong, I'll say, hey, the good news is that's not what happened. This is what happened instead. Here's the site for that. Or respectfully, I see things in a different way, and here's what I know about it. Help me understand where you got your information on that. So I feel like if we don't start trying to find better ways of treating each other, both at home and in other places, we're never going to get any better. And then it goes out to that last part about the develop the solution. Instead of us just saying, here's what we're going to do and start legislating things to people, what are your thoughts about how we can fix this? And I believe in asking them to share what their thoughts are instead of us poisoning the well by us going first. I want to ask, what are your thoughts about it? What's your, because again, if we're jointly trying to do this, it's a better chance of us doing that. And so, again, some better approaches to that. So I'm going to stop sharing just for a minute here. And I'm curious about y'all's thought. Can y'all tell I'm a Southerner? Sorry about that. I try to make sure I don't use Southernisms. It just came out. What are your thoughts about this particular process as you hear it? And I know you're hearing it for the first time and seeing it. So believe me, I'm respectful of that.
So I have a question on that is many times when this stuff happens, you can get really irritated, and it's like sometimes it's being able to find that time to calm right down. A lot of times I'll calm right down and then it doesn't bother me, so I'm just going to ignore it till it comes up again.
Yeah, and I think that ignoring part is really a mistake. And again, I think that if it's something that really bothers us enough, I think this is when we clarify things and have these out loud conversations with each other and say, help me understand. And I'll just say this, if you just shortcut it and say, help me understand what happened from your perspective, if you'll simply do that, we'll have better conversations than why did you do that? Because why did you do that feels like interrogation. It does not feel like exploration, doesn't feel like anything positive is coming from that. But help me to understand what happened. There's just a much different reaction from that. And my clients are saying they channel this on a regular basis because they found it doesn't seem to irritate people. They're much more likely to stay in a problem-solving mode and get things worked out. And so that's one of the reasons why I thought it might be useful for us filling in instead of the gaps that we fill in with stuff. Could we fill in that gap and that pause with something that's more reliable and have those conversations with each other?
I think it's great advice. I really like it all. I'm just curious as well about sometimes for an extrovert, an introvert's silence can feel like a withdrawal or a criticism, and it sometimes is neutral. It sometimes is those things. It sometimes is just that they're thinking, you know. So I think I'd be interested in your advice really about handling as an extrovert how you handle that misreaction to silence.
So to your point, one of the things that I do is I'll ask the question and then I intentionally just wait. And I sit there and I make sure I'm not like twiddling or fidgeting during the wait. I make sure that I'm just relaxed and thinking it through. And I'll say, hey, do you need a few more minutes to think about this? And keep in mind, I've tried to make sure I cleared at the beginning that now is a good time for us to talk about this by saying, hey, is now a good time instead of me just launching to it and having on Sharon time when it's not on John time or somebody else's time frame, to make sure it's a good time. And I also think that we can have these conversations in parts. It doesn't mean we've got to clear everything out right in the moment. It means that we can pause, take a break, and let's reconvene at another time. It gives both parties a chance to think it through what's been said and say, hey, you and I have talked about a lot of stuff. Would you be okay with the fact that maybe take a break, come back to this maybe later this evening, and let's revisit this again? Would that feel good to you? And so you're getting a sense of the cadence of that person and what it is that they need, and we're just not demanding that we get this thing cleaned up and out of the way and on our time frame from doing that. Any other thoughts about that I could be just like totally off base from y'all's perspective?
I'm wondering if there's a difference between introvert feeling types and introvert thinking types that might be difficult for extroverts sometimes to spot that an introvert feeling type is an introvert, because I can think of a couple of introvert feeling types I know who talk lots. So you could not know that they need time alone because they seem to be interacting.
And to your point, I think that's one of the reasons why I tend to check in and say, hey, how are we doing right now? How's it going for you at this moment? Are you in a good place for us to continue this conversation? It's that, again, it's that continuous check-in, but it's also a reminder, quit making up stuff about why they're doing this. I think that's our biggest challenge, is that story generation that we have about why somebody's doing something, even using type as a reason to do that. Remember, we all know that type is just a jumping off point. It's not the be all end all. It's the starting place, but not the finish. And I think that's such a huge thing, is just say, hey, I wonder if this is why they're doing this. And then posing it, hey, I don't know if I'm right or not. Is the reason why this rubbed you wrong is because you felt like that I just couldn't stop talking about it? Could that be part of it? And I do think we should examine our role in it. Is there something I did that caused this to maybe go off the rails, and having that real sense of self-examination?
Sharon, I just had another thought based on what Isabel was saying, or slightly related to what Isabel was saying, which is, if you've got an introvert where, their feeling function is their third or fourth function, they've quite possibly got more difficulty accessing and expressing that, the emotions or the emotional side. So what seems like withdrawal might be just that time they need to process and think and work out how to express whatever emotion it is that, or thoughts they're feeling, if that makes sense.
I think it makes total sense. And that's one of the reasons why I think about our conversations we have. They're many times truncated. We talk, we relax. We talk, we relax. As we do it in parts instead of an all at one, we got to finish this kind of situation. And it gives me a chance to go back and figure out, am I the reason why we're having this problem? In other words, just to stop and examine myself and to keep asking those questions of self-examination, and to figure out, am I judging John too harshly in terms of this? Am I giving motives here? Am I supplying, making up stuff? As I say, MSU degree, making shit up about things. And so it's just being conscious about all of that. To bring this to a close, because I want to be conscious about your time, we have 2 minutes left, y'all. There's one other tool that this is the middle of the night thought, is that I thought might be useful, is that I think the tool of apology and forgiveness is really important. And the apology piece, like, I realized what I did, and the impact on you. We have to literally say it out loud. I own it. I'm sorry. And here's how I'm going to fix it. So I think about, for example, my brother-in-law, my sister, they were in a bad car wreck. They had 4 kids with them and an extra niece. So there were 5 kids in the car. And when my brother came to go to pick his daughter up from the medical center, Alan, the driver, who had fallen asleep at the wheel, said, Bob, I caused this accident. I fell asleep at the wheel. I am responsible for what happened. Catherine and I have had a conversation about this. We've made a decision from here on out. We are never getting behind the wheel again, sleepy or tired. That's totally inappropriate. We're going to make sure that we go to bed on time. We have bedtimes for the kids. We haven't had that for ourselves, and that stops as of today. And so it was interesting how what could have been a situation where a relative could have gotten more upset, relaxed as a result of that apology. But the other part is forgiveness. And it is that we start giving ourselves some breaks. And it doesn't mean we say what the other person did is okay, but it's just that we stop having that internal conversation about it. I am not going to bring it up to you again. I'm not going to bring it up to other people. I'm going to bring it up to myself. I'm actually going to give myself a break from thinking about this. I will not use it against you, and I'm not allowed to come between us. So again, and I'll make sure I add this, by the way, to the tool that I gave you in this. The last thing is, y'all, on a fun note, well, I do want to show you this. Hold on. On a fun note, this particular thing. So Monday, which I think is kind of funny, is our anniversary. It'll be our 46th anniversary that we have. And so he is just the greatest guy. I'll tell you this. My theory is number one, marry a nerd. Number two, marry an INTP. They are just amazing humans. So I think that they're just really special. Their interior, their brain. I've often said I wish I could crack his head open just to see all that majesty that's happening inside there. And I think that's the one thing that I've learned over all this many years of marriage is that to have such a sense of appreciation for what happens in the interior of an introvert, and to see it's just a huge gift. And I do regard it that way. And he knows that, and it's that mutual respect that we give each other. So thank you guys all for being here.
Amazing.
This is a lot, wasn't it? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. We
absolutely
do
brilliant.
therapy. You know you're getting a therapy session, right? But thank you so very much. I'll hang out with Viv a little bit. If
Sharon,
a question, I'm certainly.
yeah, that's great.
I know some of you have to go, but thank you so much. I know you had other choices, and I appreciate your being here. I never take it for granted ever.
Sharon, on behalf of BAPT, thank you very much. Um, I could totally relate when you said, wow, I'm married to an introvert, but I need to work on me first. And thank you for sharing your strategies and ideas that I can work on me to help with my ISTJ husband. So we really appreciate you. And thanks for you all in the audience for supporting us. Our next session is at 7:45, and a really tough choice between Jane Kesey and Dario Nardi. So I'll leave you to decide. And of course, we've got all the sessions on record. So either which way, you can watch the other one on record later. So thanks all, and we'll see you in the next session. Thanks again, Sharon.
Thank you, Karen.